Chautauqua is made possible by the Maryland Humanities Council, Montgomery College, and the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Welcome. You've just tuned in to a program called Chautauqua. Chautauqua is a living history program where scholar actors dress up in full costume and character to portray famous people in history who've had a significant impact on the world. I'm Angela Rice-Beamer here at the Germantown Campus of Montgomery College. Our theme is Turning Points in History. Tonight's Chautauqua character lived from 1907 to 1964. She helped us understand our interconnection with nature and the dangers of environmental pollution. Tonight's Chautauqua character was an ecologist, a scientist, and writer. Tonight's Chautauqua character is Rachel Carson.
How uplifting to see such a great turnout of people who care for the environment. I'm winded. It's a long walk through these congressional corridors of power. I'm happy to have a few moments to regroup with you before what I believe to be an important day. Thank you for your support as I testify before President Kennedy's Scientific Advisory Committee. I am here to answer questions about the harmful effects of indiscriminate spraying of pesticides on our environment. Your presence here not only bolsters my resolve, but conveys strong solidarity of purpose to promote responsible conservation of our natural world. Washington's summer heat is proving an extra challenge today. You may think my activism comes easily. It does not. I am much more comfortable communing with nature than here speaking in Congress. How does a shy Pennsylvania farm girl come to be here in this public forum? Partly it's because of my books about the environment, but I would not be here today if it weren't for great role models and mentors. Their guidance in nurturing my skills in writing and scientific studies has brought me now to a place to make a difference. Dr. Albert Schweitzer was one of those role models. He inspires not only me, but millions of people around the world with his missionary efforts in Africa. That is why I am most humbled to receive the Albert Schweitzer Medal last year. For I believe Dr. Schweitzer is one of the greatest individuals of our times. He was one of the first to warn the world about nuclear contamination and to decry the destruction of honeybees in France due to the spraying of chemicals after the war. It is for those reasons and many more that I have dedicated my book, Silent Spring, to this gifted healer and humanitarian. During World War II, I first became aware of the chemical DDT. Reports came across my desk at the Bureau of Fisheries and Wildlife, and they were talking about the spraying of chemicals around our troops in Italy to stem the outbreak of typhus. I was concerned about the effect on humans and wildlife, and I gathered my information and jotted down my notes, thinking that it wise to look into the situation after the war. In 1957, I received a letter from a friend, Olga Huckins, describing the devastation that happened in her Massachusetts community when they sprayed DDT. I brought that letter today. I wanted to share some of that with the testimony. Perhaps you'll indulge me a moment. Here it is. She began, "The harmless shower," as she put it, "killed 7 of our lovely songbirds outright. We picked up 3 dead bodies right by our door the next morning. The next day, 3 were scattered at our bird bath. I had scrubbed it out, but you can never kill DDT. And the following day, a robin suddenly fell from a tree in our woods. We were too heartsick to hunt for other corpses and..." Excuse me. I wonder what else I am drinking besides H2O. My mother was my greatest role model. She shared with me her sense of wonder with nature and helped me learn great observational skills. I was a shy, somewhat isolated child with a much older brother and sister, and we shared a small farmhouse with my parents in Springdale, Pennsylvania. The children at school teased me because of our poverty. But outside the classroom, outside, I had the richness of 65 rolling acres of farmland as my playground, my Garden of Eden. We delight in looking for wildflowers and exploring the farmland, searching out lichens. I can even remember the sheer joy of spotting a brightly colored pheasant rising up from the meadow. Oh, the mysteries of anything wild that crawled, swam, flew, or ran simply captivated me. I don't remember a time that I was not simply totally fascinated with nature. We would hear the steamboats as they came around, winding around the bend of the Allegheny River. And it was there that I discovered a fossilized shell in the rocky shale river cliffs. I wondered where it had come from, what happened to the animal that was living in it, and what happened to the sea that nurtured it so long ago. Well, Mother wanted to encourage my fascination with the sea, and she gave me a shell. I brought it today for inspiration. Oh yes, I learned long ago that the murmuring sounds inside the shell was just the echo of my pulse inside my ear, but it harkens of the sea, and it reminds me of my dear mother. She was compassionate, but she could fight fiercely against anything she felt wrong, as in our current crusade. I also don't remember a time when I didn't want to be a writer. Do you like books? Do you? Do you like to read? I devour books. When Father was hitching up the horses to go into town, I would plead with him to please take me with him so I could go to the library. I learned that writing was hard work, but I would write and rewrite my stories, and when I was 11 years old, I won a writing competition and had my first story published in a magazine. When the $10 prize money arrived in the mail the following week, that's all the encouragement I needed. My high school friends wrote a poem about my diligence. They put it in next to my picture in the yearbook. What did it say? Oh, yes. Rachel's like the noonday sun, always very bright. Never stopped her studying till she gets it right. Well, I'm afraid I was never the most popular or dynamic student, but I believe their assessment accurate. After high school, I continued my studies at Pennsylvania College for Women, but I only had enough money for 1 year. Fortunately, I had published a story in the college literary magazine, and the college president had read it, and she was inspired to award me a full scholarship so I could become a writer. Just when I thought my future plans were set, the unexpected happened. Oh, I took a biology class, and the entire subject matter and the teacher fascinated me. Marie Skinker was her name, and she was a popular teacher on campus, and there was a lot of controversy because science was considered a male domain, and Mary did not teach the ordinary classes that women taught. So there was much discussion and controversy, but I didn't care. Mary became my teacher, my role model, and my friend, and radically altered the course of my life. I wanted to change my major from English to science, but I worried about what Mother would think, and the college president. They both expected me to become an author. While struggling with that decision, I turned to a book of poetry. And in the middle of a Tennyson poem, a beautiful line caught my attention. For the nightly wind arises, roaring seaward, and I go. Roaring seaward, and I go. My decision was made. I would become a biologist. After college, my first job was in the summer as a researcher with the marine biology labs at Woods Hole, Massachusetts. I was so excited because I was studying with the most famous biologists in the world. And finally, I was at the edge of the sea. The sea that I had only dreamt and read about. Oh, it was magical. A wonderful place to biologize. I studied the whole summer working in the lab studying the nervous system of turtles. But every spare moment, I would race down to the tidal pools teeming with life. I was fascinated with the sea anemone and urchins. With all the many hours in the sun, I also realized that I would never get a tan. Only a weathered look and a fresh set of freckles. But it was there that I came to understand the interconnectedness of life. Only the most hardy and adaptable creatures can survive the ebb and flow of tides, and yet the area between the tide lines is filled with plant and animal life, some visible, some invisible, deep within the sand. Have you ever been to the beach and seen that tide lines? Have you studied the area there? It's fascinating. The sea provides a model for our own adaptability if we honor nature's balance and strive to understand its dynamic of change. The sea has a relentless drive to life. Well, despite my enthusiasm, I felt it prudent to look into possible employment in science before I began my graduate studies at Johns Hopkins. I went to talk with a man at the Bureau of Fisheries and Wildlife. His name was Elmer Higgins, and he said to me, "Miss Carson, since you are a woman, you should become a scientist. You should become a teacher. We do not hire scientists, women scientists." I looked at him and said, "I am not studying to become a teacher. I am studying to become a scientist." A scientist. Well, he must have been impressed with my determination, because he relented and said, "Stop by after grad school." That's all I needed to hear. My first year at Johns Hopkins was very difficult. Inorganic chemistry. The hardest course I have ever taken. And I missed my parents terribly. I went to visit them, and I was so disheartened when I saw that my hometown was no longer the Eden of my childhood. It had become an ugly cityscape of power plants and cheap developments that were polluting the air and the Allegheny River. My parents were hard hit by the Depression, as most people were at that time. We discussed it and decided that the best thing would be to have them move with me to Baltimore. I rented a house near the Chesapeake Bay that was big enough for my family and had indoor plumbing. Sadly, a few years later, Father died, and it fell wholly onto me to support my family, which consisted of my mother, my older sister, who was quite ill, and her 2 daughters. I realized that my part-time teaching jobs at the University of Maryland and at Hopkins would not be sufficient. So I remembered Higgins, and I went back there to the Bureau of Fisheries, and he recalled my determination to become a scientist. He had me take the civil service exam, and I received the top score ever recorded. He hired me, and I received $38 a week as a junior scientist. I supplemented my income by writing stories for the Baltimore Sun and other publications. But while I was writing a long essay at work for Higgins, I was expecting to put this into a series of brochures. Higgins just shook his head and said, "This is much too literary for a government publication." It needs to be much simpler for public information. He did suggest that I submit it to the Atlantic Monthly, which I did, and they published it. I was ecstatic to be published in a major magazine. Oh, finally, my passion for writing and for science collided. Oh, but I'm an introvert, and I know nothing about the business of publishing books and magazines. But with the help of Marie Rodell, a very sophisticated New Yorker, as my literary agent, my writing career has soared higher than I could have ever dreamed. Marie remains a dear friend to this day. I love writing. But my true joy is to stand at the edge of the sea and to sense the ebb and flow of tides and feel the rise of a mist over a great salt marsh, or to watch the flight of shorebirds that have swept up and down the shorelines of continents for untold centuries, or to see the running of the old eels or the young shad to the sea. To have knowledge of these things is as nearly eternal as any earthly life can be. Knowing that joy, the more I learned about the indiscriminate spraying of chemicals around our environment, the more appalled I became. I knew that there was material for a book, and I discovered that everything I held sacred was being threatened. I knew that there was nothing more important for me than to write that book. Our effort today is to make sure that future generations will be able to enjoy the natural world as it is intended. Responsible use of chemicals should be of concern for all of us. If we are going to consume these chemicals, eating and drinking them, taking them into the very marrow of our bones, we better know more about their power and what their nature is. The television show CBS Reports has devoted over 2 hours to Silent Spring, broadcasting the information to millions of people. Of course, the critics are raging. The chemical companies have spent over $250,000 to defame my reputation as a scientist. What does she know? She's just a woman scientist, a communist, a peace nut, a hysterical woman. Well, now, knowing what I know, there can be no peace for me without speaking out. It will help knowing that you'll be in the gallery cheering me on. The shell you gave me as a child sings a song of a faraway place I long to explore. The rush of the sea excites my mind. The smell, how enchanting to think of the magical world I'd find. For I am filled with a sense of wonder. Such a sense of wonder casts a spell in my heart. such a sense of wonder, a sense of wonder you knew so well, oh mother. In the woods we would walk together, watch the leaves falling, finding flowers wild. Don't touch them, lichens at the base of the trees. Get down on my knees where I can smell the earth. A bird taking flight, there's red on its wings, oh, its wings. For I am filled with a sense of wonder, such a sense of wonder fills my heart. I am fulfilled with a sense of wonder, which you, dear mother, brought into my heart. Oh, mother, I miss you so much. Please be with me today. I need your strength.
June 4th, 1963. Senate testimony begins today on the controversial use of pesticides. Rachel Carson, award-winning author of Silent Spring, will testify before the President's Science Advisory Committee, headed by Senator Abe Ribicoff.
Mother, are you watching? Is this just a show? The tiny little creatures depend on us to know. Oh, I don't feel strong now. How can I go on? Who will make them think after I'm gone? Please, someone out there today, listen to me. Listen to me. Let the forest keep its voice and make my weary heart rejoice.
Miss Carson, on behalf of the committee, we certainly welcome you here. You are the lady who started all this.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee.
Senators, the problem you have chosen to explore is one that must be solved in our time. I feel strongly that a beginning must be made on it now, in this session of Congress.
God, please make them listen. God, please make them care.
We must stop indiscriminate use of pesticides.
Make my words have power, floating on the air.
These chemicals invisibly contaminate our world.
Oh, I don't feel strong now. How can I go on?
Unless we bring these chemicals under control, we are headed for disaster.
Who will make them think after I'm gone?
There will be an irrevocable loss of species.
Do they have a conscience? Is this just a show? The tiny little creatures depend on us to know. Oh God, please make them listen. God, please make them care. Why do they attack me? There's critics everywhere. Let them care, make them care, all the people everywhere. Mother's legacy to me, that I appreciate a tree and every creature in the sea. Let them care, make them care, all the people everywhere. The only science that is deserving is that which helps us in preserving nature in its glory everywhere. The power of my words, I've shared the magic mystery of teeming life beneath the sea and beyond our view. Excitement share the creatures colorful and rare that make their homes down there beneath the sea. With the power of my words, I find expression for my soul beyond the limits of myself. And in my own world, this full creation that we find within ourselves is all connected with our whole planet. By the power of my words, I have to move the people's hearts. I need to open up their eyes and make them see. By the power of my words, I can change people's voice to preserve our earth in natural harmony. In the power, with the power, by the power of my words.
I'm here with Kate Campbell Stevenson, who just performed as Rachel Carson. Thank you so much for being here. It was a wonderful performance.
Well, thank you, Angela. It's just a pleasure to be here.
How would you describe her? She was an introvert, but how would you describe her, having read so much and performed, learned about her?
Well, she was a very intricate woman. She was an introvert, and yet she had this beautiful talent for writing, and she could express herself through her words. And it was very exciting to read about this woman and to bring her to life.
Have you performed her a long time, or is it?
Actually, I have performed Rachel. I wrote a song about Rachel Carson, and in it, a friend of mine, Martha Hart-Johns, wrote the beautiful lyrics about the power of her words. And I've been performing that part, that song, in my show, Women Back to the Future. I have just now expanded for Chautauqua to have this 35-minute piece.
Have you performed Women Back to the Future as a Chautauquan, or is that something separate you do?
No, that's completely separate.
Have you been a Chautauquan a long time?
This is my first time.
Okay.
And it's been a lot of fun. I was very, very pleased that I could participate.
Did the fame that she received from her writing surprise her? Did it sort of overwhelm her, or did she sort of, was she able to put it in perspective?
I think she had always had a passion for writing, and I think secretly she really wanted to succeed as a writer. And although she was an introvert, she did have, I'm not saying she had an ego, but you know, she had some self-esteem, and she was very proud of the work that she produced.
Yeah, and her writing is so lyrical in many cases. She does have that ability to take something complex and make it very understandable.
And that's where her success came. When she wrote the 3 books about the sea, she took a very complicated scientific information and she brought it to life with these beautiful words for everyday people like you and me to understand, and that's why she became so successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it truly is, it is beautiful. You begin to get through her words a sense of the person, and she draws such, or she paints with her words such pictures of beauty, and then also she brought the stark realities of things that weren't beautiful.
Well, she had this sense of wonder, and she also had the scientific reality as a scientist to understand terrible changes were going to be happening if we didn't pay attention to what was going on with the chemicals we were introducing to the world.
She was so ahead of her time.
She was indeed. She was a visionary.
Because so many things that are going on now, she spoke about so many years before.
She did, and when putting my script together, it was very important for me to put in, when I read that she was concerned about the destruction of honeybees in France because of DDT, that's going on today. I mean, these problems are still here, and so I felt it really important to put that into the script.
And she was one of the question and answer portion. The audience didn't, the television audience won't see. So I'm going to ask you some of the things that were discussed there. She did work with the Chesapeake Bay, and also I read something, Chincoteague Island in Virginia.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. She did go down there, and she really explored all up and down the East Coast, from Florida up to Maine, and she was in love with the many different aspects of sea life.
What surprised you about her? What was one of the, or some of the things that were most surprising about her?
She had such a strong inner strength. She really, I mean, when the critics were coming after her, it was devastating to her. And yet she had such poise and such calm, and she was so confident in the scientific data that she had collected that she was firm. And I just find that tremendously inspiring as a reader, and understanding the strength that she had as a woman. She supported her family. She was a working woman early. I mean, it started in the 30s working, and she was really a trailblazer, but she never would think of herself as a trailblazer. She just was doing what needed to be done.
In the process of preparing to perform her, what was your process? How did you begin to?
I tried to collect as much information as possible about her, and in putting the script together, I wanted it to expand the already existing song, the scene from where she testifies in front of Congress. I wanted to expand, so go backwards to lead up to that scene, and so I really did as much reading as possible, and I needed to put some background information because I realized many of the people who were coming tonight didn't necessarily have that information about Rachel Carson. And so I needed to have some family information and some scientific information and things that she felt passionate about. I was able to expand it more from the song to, there's a part in the show where she says, "But my true joy is to stand at the edge of the sea, to sense the ebb and flow of tides, to feel the rise of a morning mist over a great salt marsh." And she went on and on. I mean, beautiful words. And so I wanted to make sure that I could incorporate that.
Even though she had many critics, who were some of the people who were her strong supporters throughout? Her family, perhaps?
Definitely, her family. Her mother was her biggest, had the biggest impact on her. They were soulmates. Her mother was the one who really gave her shared the gift of wonder with her, and the sense of wonder, and to appreciate nature, appreciate birds. And her mother worked with her up until the day she died. She worked with her typing out her manuscript for Silent Spring and helping her with her research. So they were really soulmates.
There's a powerful part in your performance where you have the conch shell,
Yes.
and you talk, and she's sort of singing that to her mother, that to support me, to
Right.
I miss you. I
wanted
know
to
you're
try
here with
and
me.
make that connection, and the shell which the mother gave her when she was a child, it still was an inspiration to her today. I mean, during her time.
And her mother did get a chance to.
Her mother died before Silent Spring was published, but she knew that what she was doing and what Rachel was developing, and she was able to type out some of the first manuscripts of it and some of her research. But she died, I think, 3 or 4 years before it was published.
And one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation was that she was the head of the household, so she was supporting her mother, a niece. Were there other?
Yes,
were there
her
two
mother
nieces?
and two nieces, and then the two girls, and then her great nephew Roger she adopted when he was 5 years old, and as a son, and he was 12 when she died. So.
What happened to her family members after she died, and because she was
Paul
a sole?
Brooks adopted or took on the care, which was one of the publishers and he basically took on the care of Roger and raising him.
And what about the two nieces? Were they of age?
They
to
were
take
grown. They were
at
grown.
that point.
Well, one had died, and then the other one.
Right. Yeah. Do you have some recommendations for adults and children to learn more about her?
There are some wonderful biographies out there. Linda Lear has an excellent biography, and many. If you just Google, nowadays you can just Google and get that information. But the Linda Lear biography is really the best, I think, in describing the situation.
Also by Linda Lear is Lost Woods, which has a compilation
Yes.
of some of her writings from different periods of her life, and I think that's a particularly good one. She does introductions before and then Rachel Carson's actual words. Did you work a lot with the Rachel Carson Council at all?
Yes, I've actually, the very first time when I was writing the song that I sang at the end of the program, I put together, I sang it for Dr. Diana Post at the Rachel Carson Council, and in my car, I put it in just the rough draft and sang it for her, and we both were just crying because it was so powerful. And Diana has been a wonderful resource, and she's a great resource for all the community. To contact them at the Rachel Carson Council.
And you can find them on the web as well.
Yes, indeed.
We just have a little bit of time left. What's next for you? Because being a Chautauquan is not the only thing you do.
No, actually I have a new show coming out. It's called Forging Frontiers, Women Leaders in STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And Rachel Carson will be a part of that show. And also my relative Louise Arner Boyd, who led 7 Arctic expeditions in the 1920s and the 1930s. Nobody knows about her, but that's why I'm out there. I'm going to spread the word. And also I'll be highlighting contemporary women of science, technology, engineering, and math. Some women from NASA, FBI, women from medicine that are really wonderful role models for today's students.
That is extremely important. You did talk about going to schools as well as some of the other
Yes.
venues, and it's important to let the students know, because I didn't know about some of the women that you
Right.
mentioned.
That's what I like to do. I like to not only do some that are more well known, but some that aren't well known, so they can learn about these wonderful women.
Yeah, thank you so much. I did want to ask you, how did you find your outfit? Because it is so quintessential. that
I
period.
researched it, and I designed it, and I made it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, thank you so much for being here. We've really enjoyed it. You've shared wonderful information, and we all learned a lot.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. You've been watching Chautauqua, Turning Points in History. I'm Angela Rice Beamer from the Germantown Campus of Montgomery College. Good night.